extent, green foliages, are certainly, I'll get to this in just a second, the green foliages create very much a cooling effect. Variegated foliages warm up the area visually, make it look a little bit hot. If you want a really cool, lush look, stick primarily to green foliage. Question?
Well, I was going to ask you, planting this landscaping really looked north of town, about 3 inches of soil and solid rock.
Yeah.
How about planting these trees, what do you take into consideration preparation of plant trees and that kind of thing?
Okay, if you're living on solid rock, the preparation of plant trees and shrubs and things like that is exactly the same as it is if you're living in very wet soils. You've got to get up above the rock. The worst thing you can do is jackhammer out a basin in the rock. It will be a pool that will hold water. If you're on very shallow soil and you want to plant anything very big, raised beds are going to be the answer. Around the home, in the area you want to plant your trees, they don't necessarily have to be huge. Most areas, not only you have just that solid shelf of rock that a root will never get through, but most of the hill country there are fissures in that rock, and the roots will find their ways down through if you give them a place to start. Look at the vegetation that is on your property right now. If the trees that are there, whether they're cedars, whether they're oaks, whatever they are, if you've got a jillion little trees that are about this big around, you have a real problem, with just having basically impermeable rock. But you're sitting here and hitting it with your digging bar and hitting rock 3 inches down, but over here there's an oak tree that's this big around. That tells me you've got lots of soil around there. It's just hidden in among the cracks and fissures in the rock. You plant that tree in effect up on top of the ground, those roots will find their way into the better soil. You're going to have to water, you're going to have to care for things regularly. If you look over, kind of up just behind the building, there are 4 pretty good sized live oaks up there that are about this size. When we first acquired this property, there was actually a spring up toward the front. You dug down about 3 inches, you hit water anywhere on this. We're basically sitting on fill dirt. We put some big trees in that properly folded up and died. So we wanted some good sized trees. So we brought in some big oaks. We set them on top of the ground, and then we built with railroad ties. That was what was available at the time. We built the planters up around and then filled the soil in. Those tree roots have found their way down into the soil. The root knows where it can grow, where it can adapt to conditions, and those trees have thrived very much. But where you're sitting on solid rock, depending on what you want to plant, you better plan on raised beds.
So the rest would be like you just talked about, like that, soil too small. So
start out with something relatively small, and again, if we had to do it over, I would have built those tree wells out of rock. We probably will one of these days as the railroad ties rot away. But yeah, you have to go up. You can't go down. And if you are uncertain, in fact, I recommend this every time you're planting, trees or shrubs. Dig the hole, fill the hole with water. If all the water drains out overnight, it's fine to plant. If you come back tomorrow and there's still water standing in that hole, don't put a plant in there because it's going to die. It's not the water that kills it, it's the lack of oxygen. The water drives the oxygen out of the soil. Plant roots have to have oxygen. They're going to die if they stand in the water. So when in doubt, go up rather than down. And that's one other principle I want to talk about. I'll answer your question first. You hate Nandina?
It just grows everywhere.
Tree can't.
How do I do it? I got maybe one Nandina tree. I grew to a tree, but I got tons of bushes.
May I introduce you to a grubbing hoe?
Okay, so how long do I it broke out again? Was it really?
The roots on an Nandina are relatively shallow. They don't go real deep. And you may have to spread out 2 feet in each direction. But you get the roots out and there will be very little resprouting. Okay, I think the last general principle that I want to talk about as far as an area of making smaller areas look larger as ways of adding interest to the yard is think 3-dimensionally. Doesn't mean you have to build a lot of raised beds, but we do what are called berms, which are basically just mounds of soil. And as you're driving around doing your homework, looking at landscapes that you like, I think you'll find that a lot of the landscapes that you consider really interesting are going to be places where people have changed the contour of the ground. And you can take a relatively small lot and add a great deal of interest by creating your own, and I mean, you don't have 100 little hills going like this, but if you have an area, you know, from here again to the back of the seminar area, you come off to the side and you just slope it up 18 inches or so, it's amazing the visual impact that creates. Plus it gives you the way to display your plants a whole lot better. Say you want to grow 6 different varieties of plants and they're all 12 inches tall. If you put them in there, everything but the first row is going to kind of be lost. But if you've got a gradual slope going up, you can contour those things coming down and again make your landscape much, much more interesting. The other thing that you'll want to do as you do your basic plan is make note areas that you want to have and make note of the good architectural features of your home and token architectural features of your home. Most cases you will want to highlight where your front door is. You will want to, and in a lot of cases you can upgrade the look of a house on set with a new front door or even a new coat of paint on the front door. But you want to create something of interest around the porch, around your front door. So you may want to draw in there, okay, we're going to have a couple of specimen plants and have some color around that area. The home, even if you have to wander along the sidewalk, when you're still 10, 15, 20 feet, you're going to know where the entrance to your home is, just simply, you know, by the fact that you created a more interesting area, if you will, of landscape around it. If your home is very compressed this way and you want to make it seem larger, plant large plants on the corner so you really don't see where the house ends. You've got this flowing bed, you've got a nice big, you know, plant of some sort here on the corner, and you don't really see the end of the house. You see a continuing flowing garden, and nobody knows that you live in this little shotgun house that, you know, is a very narrow, very small house. So disguising the corners, you know, is sometimes a good thing to do to try to make a small area seem larger. And again, you know, decide if you want basically 2 yards, front yard and backyard. In many cases, I think a side yard is absolutely essential, if nothing else, for that storage shed, to store that both, or to create a wonderful little intimate private garden for yourself, or a vegetable garden, or whatever else. But don't start drawing and then think, well, you know, I'm going to live with it, this is what I've done. I think, unless you're a whole lot more talented than I am, you're going to tear it up, rip it up 6 or 8 times before you really come up with ideas that you like. And this idea of looking around at other landscapes to start getting your ideas together, again, put totally out of your mind what the plants are. Don't get married to a specific type of plant, but look at the lines, look at the patterns, look at the contours, see how the top of the plants work with the roof line of your home. If you've got a 2-story home, sure, you can plant something tall and slender next to it. But if you've got a 1-story home, don't plant something that's going to grow 25 feet tall. It's just going to look totally out of place when it grows up, or even 15 feet tall. So that's kind of the homework assignment I will leave you with for this week. I'll happily stay and answer questions about anything specific, but get that digital camera out, you know, do your drawing, do your planning. Above all, think about what you want your landscape to be in the future. Next week, if you come back, we'll talk a little bit more about actual execution of how to go about choosing your plants, how to plant them, how to mulch them, how to make sure you're going to use the minimum amount of water for the maximum effect, and how you're not going to have to replace anything that you don't want to replace. Anybody needs to go. You're not going to fit me if you get up and leave. But if you stay and listen to other people's questions, you're welcome. Yes, sir. You should not solarize at more than, say, 25% of the root zone of a tree. I would never solarize the whole area. But if I wanted to kill an area of grass over here and there were a portion of the tree's roots underneath it, I wouldn't worry about it. Yes? A red oak is very soft wood, probably 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah. A live oak probably takes 6 months.
If I have any poles, it's this big.
12 or 15. Sit there with that electric drill and drill my hole. Thank you all.
Thank you. How are you?
Question? Lots to think about.